Yeah, so 30-second board. Let's do it. Hot topics are all the moves. And we're going to start with Monster Energy Star Racing Yamaha, who bids adieu to the Eli Tomac era and begins to transition Hayden Deegan into the 450 division. Now, they already have two other very capable riders, with none other than the Monster Energy Supercross champion Cooper Webb and Justin Cooper returning. They bid adieu to Eli with a really cool video post tribute at the end of October. We'll talk about Tomac's new home at KTM in a moment, but how about the Deegan transition? We know for sure it's 450 in Pro Motocross. Maybe sooner? Will he race some AMA Supercross on 450? That's one of the biggest questions buzzing right now.
It is, and when you look at this Monster Yamaha Star Racing team, most people would think, hey, you just lost Eli Tomac, one of the best racers we've ever seen. That's a devastating blow. But you look at the big picture, they have the reigning champion, Cooper Webb, and they have the rider that everybody thinks is next in Hayden Deegan. So it's almost an embarrassment of riches that this team has when you can lose a talent like Eli Tomac and you simply reload with more talent.
Well, that's really summed it up. They simply didn't have the money to pay Webb, Tomac, and Deegan, all high-end 450 riders. Most 450 teams are two riders only. They also have Justin Cooper. So they're going to run the risk here that Deegan can fill the shoes. He's certainly capable of it. But I don't even think the Deegan camp knows. 450, 250, some of each in Supercross. Do you have any idea?
No, and this is a very unique thing because I think most riders, it would be a no-brainer that you would want to test the waters in the 450 just to get a feeling of where you're at. Not only for Pro Motocross in 2026, but also full-time in 2027. But that's not the world that Hayden Deegan lives in. He can't simply dip his toe in the water without all the ramifications of social media and expectation and everybody comparing him to Jet Lawrence when that is not really the goal for Supercross 2026. So it puts him in a precarious spot. Yes, there's a lot of upside, but there's a lot of backlash and downside that's on the table if it doesn't go particularly well. I think the one question I don't know the answer to is if you're Brian Deegan or you're the management team kind of guiding Hayden Deegan's career, do you even care? Because the conversation and the narrative will be stolen by Hayden Deegan no matter what if he decides to race a few 450 Supercrosses.
Now, we mentioned Tomac. He's going to Red Bull KTM, and you and I have known about this for months. But if you go back a few years ago to think of him on a Red Bull KTM, this does not seem like a marriage that anyone saw coming. But in the end, they were the perfect tandem for each other.
Yeah, I think opportunity meets kind of necessity. You know, Red Bull KTM needed a guy that could possibly win a Monster Energy Supercross championship in 2026. And that's not a slight against Aaron Plessinger, but he hasn't been healthy as of late. They bring in Jorge Prado, but we know that Monster Energy Supercross is not necessarily his forte either. So I think for Eli, he wanted an opportunity on factory equipment again, and Red Bull KTM needs that type of guy. Now the question is across the board for Red Bull KTM, what does it look like? Because there are questions at every turn. Eli Tomac's older than he's ever been. He's never raced an Austrian bike. Different suspension, different frame metallurgy, different everything everywhere, staffing, all the things that he's leaned on for the last 5 years have now changed. Jorge Prado had the worst season of his career, period, in 2025. So what does that look like? You can't say just going back to a KTM is waving a magic wand because it wasn't that fantastic in 2024 in Monster Energy Supercross on a basically similar gas machine he was on. So with Aaron Plessinger unhealthy, there are so many questions that need to be answered around this Red Bull KTM. Super high ceiling as far as potential goes, but I would say a lot of questions underneath the surface as well.
Because Chase Sexton, KTM wanted to keep him. He did not want to stay. It appeared to be an unhappy marriage there at the end between those sides. And now he goes to Monster Energy Kawasaki. And it's such a head scratcher because Prado and Kawasaki didn't get along well. Prado wants to get back into KTM. Sexton wanted to get off of KTM to get on to Kawasaki. And oh, by the way, with Prado's departure, they needed another 450 guy. They bring Garrett Marchbanks up. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Sexton and Cowie, that could be the biggest story of the whole offseason.
Yeah, and this is going to be an interesting one to watch because if you think about it, within 3 calendar years, this is the third different team for Chase Sexton. He leaves with a lot of success at the end of 2023 from Honda, goes to Red Bull KTM. We didn't really know how it was going to go. It seemed like he was making this big change that was going to unlock his chance to be the number one guy for a long time there. And then as soon as the door opens for him to exit, he does. And now he's at Monster Energy's Kawasaki with the same unanswered questions. Will he mesh with the bike? Can he find the success that he had in that magical 2023 season where, let's face it, it seemed like every time he went out, he was the fastest guy, but we have not seen that Chase Sexton consistently since, I would say, maybe the summer of 2024. That guy still lives inside himself somewhere. It's waiting to come out again. It seems like there's so many variables and there's noise around him and his program that's kind of keeping him from being his best self. So let's see if 2026 is that magical time again.
Real quick, let's talk about Marchbanks and the prospects there. This is a guy that took a one-year deal in 2025 to go back to Monster Pro Circuit Kawasaki. They didn't have room for him in 2026. He betted himself. He rode so well. They made room. And then now he's got a 450 shot, which, as you know, JT, these rides don't come around often. All-time career chess move by Marchbanks, but now he's got to deliver.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think that this second spot at Monster Energy Kawasaki for 26 was one of the strangest dynamics we've seen in recent history for a full factory ride. For Marchbanks, yes, getting a chance at a full factory 450, that is a coup in and of itself. But there's a lot of uncertainty. If he doesn't perform, if he doesn't live up to expectation, it's going to be difficult for another team or his current team to want to sign him up again. So there is risk associated with this, and I think that's why you saw some hesitancy with riders like Cameron McAdoo jumping at the opportunity for something like that, because there is risk. And it's a separate topic, but I think the decision by Tom Vial to leave this series was exactly this same situation. A one-year deal with no certainty on the back side of it. It's a little bit scary as far as what his propositions will be for 2027.
And then there's a whole new brand out there that will be racing Supercross for the first time. Yes, Ducati. This is very quick. We only knew about 2 years ago they were going to build a motocross bike at all. And now they're going to race Monster Energy Supercross. They have veterans with Justin Barcia and Dylan Ferrandis as the racers. But we can't stress enough, Supercross is brand new to this company.
Yeah, all the teams that we've spoken about so far are expecting to win championships in 2026 immediately, right? That's the expectation. That's why they go racing. I don't think that's necessarily where Ducati comes into this series. I think they're in development mode. They're trying to plan for the future, work out the bugs, because let's face it, they don't know what they don't know yet. They don't know the challenges they're going to face putting that motorcycle on a Supercross track as of yet. There will be a lot of learning done, and to the upside, they're going to have the experience of Justin Barcia, who's won races for a decade, so he knows what the motorcycle needs to be. And then you have Dylan Ferrandis, who's been a perennial top 10 guy, your 2021 450 Pro Motocross champion, that has experience to burn as well. So I think they have the right guys to develop a bike for the future. I just think perspective is going to be the key word, especially for 2026.
A little bit opposite as we move to Triumph, the next topic. They've been at this a little longer than Ducati on the building a dirt bike side, but it's been a much slower build. They have 2 years of 250 data. Jordan Smith will be their 450 rider after a pretty solid year on a 250. But I don't know, where are the expectations there as well? It's the first 450 foray for them.
Well, if you're looking for Ducati to find a roadmap for success, not necessarily a 450, but Triumph in general, I think has been a great one to follow because they've immediately made an impact. And now they'll take this foray into the 450 class with Jordan Smith. And I think it's very similar to Ducati, where they're not going to expect to win. They have a first-year 450 guy on a first-year 450 motorcycle. So you have to temper the expectations a little bit. Just kind of go in with an open mind and learn as you go. And if you find success, that's fantastic. If they could get up there and Jordan has a magical night and gets on the podium, that's awesome. But there is upside in not having all that expectation and pressure. You can just go into it and say, hey, we're here to learn. We're going to improve every single weekend. We're going to make the bike better. That's the biggest key. You want to continually improve the bike. And I think if they do that, when you look at the big picture play here, 26, 20, and you get into 27, 28, they may be able to go after that big name rider that can bring them race wins and championships.
A couple other riders on the move. So we talked about Kawasaki earlier. Jason Anderson departs, picks up the spot at what will be called the Twisted Tea Suzuki team. essentially he's teammates with Ken Roczen. Roczen just has a different sponsor. He has Progressive logos on his bike. But with Roczen, that team, HEP Suzuki, has certainly proven themselves capable, even on a bike that people like to make jokes about. Hasn't had changes on the production side in about 7 years. But Anderson on a Suzuki, there's heritage there. He raced for them as an amateur. This could be something.
Yeah, this is going to be an opportunity for Jason Anderson. The last couple of years haven't been what he's wanted, I don't think at all. So I think he gets to kind of press the reset button here, and he gets to approach his career, you could say the second half of his career, however long he may go, with a new chance to do well. Because it just seemed like his time at Monster Energy Kawasaki, it had come to an end for a reason. Things were stale between he and the team. The results weren't coming anymore. It just seems like everybody needed a change over there. So for Anderson, I think he's looking at the success that Roczen's had. This was a Suzuki amateur for years. He was the prodigy for the RM Army years ago. So I think it's a little bit of a coming home experience for Anderson. And it wouldn't shock me for no one to really talk about Anderson and him to come out swinging at A1, because I think he thrives under this kind of negative outlook, or when people are counting him out. I think that's when he does his best work.
Yeah, and he has won the opener before. He's almost always a podium guy at Anaheim 1, even was last year. And one other rider to note on the move is Christian Craig. So he, I think, had, if he wanted it, another year at Monster Energy Star Racing, but that was a weird deal where he was helping kind of as a rider coach, but also a racer. He didn't even get to race Pro Motocross, so instead he's going to the Quad Lock Honda team. He's going to race all over the world, and then probably the full Supercross season as the team. They did the same thing for Shane McElrath last year. It worked out, and it was a good year for McElrath. We know the talent of Christian Craig. I've talked to some people on the inside. They're really happy with the effort he's putting in and how eager he is to try to make this work. So maybe there's something there.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think there's anything certain in the program, but as of now, he's made the switch, and it seems like it's given him kind of a new lease on life. There just wasn't a lot happening for him at Monster Yamaha Star Racing anymore. He was hoping for a fill-in this past summer. That never came to plan, and it was more like he was getting less opportunity than more. So we shall see. He's going to do some off-season racing on the Honda, and we'll see if they can put together a program that kind of gets him back into an opportunity, or where he can find success again. Because think about it, Weege. In 2021, this guy was dominant in 250 Supercross, besting the likes of Hunter Lawrence. And ever since then, it seems like it's just been underperforming the expectation. So, he's antsy to get back out there and prove some people wrong.
Now, the next group, we're not going to talk about them as much because there isn't new news there. Staying home, you got the very talented Ken Roczen. He was up his deal with Suzuki. He decided to return. He was linked to all sorts of rumors. Just good to see Ken Roczen considered a top-line free agent again, which is far from where he was a couple of years ago. He's really built himself back up with that Suzuki team, so he's back. Malcolm Stewart back on the Rockstar Husqvarna, and a couple other guys who aren't changing. But I think that's actually probably a good thing. It's really going to be fun to measure guys who are going to be ready against guys who are in a big adjustment period.
It's really nice when you don't have to make this fundamental change in the offseason. That is so comforting. And for a guy like Roczen or Malcolm Stewart, it's just business as usual. They can have a pretty calm offseason. They can just focus on their training. Maybe they work on making the bike a little bit better, but they don't have to move. Some of these guys have to move their entire life. They have to find a new house, find new everything, new practice bike mechanics, new race mechanic, work with all the staff. There's so much chemistry that has to be built during this time if you switch teams. Those guys don't have to do any of that. They get to basically kick back and worry about themselves and really focus on January. So it's a comfortable time, especially if you're in a good situation.
But all this talk, JT, all this, how's it going to go for all these riders? It might not matter, because there's one team that's been winning a lot as of late that isn't changing anything. All four riders return to the Progressive HRC factory Honda team. That's Jet and Hunter Lawrence, that's Chance Hymas, and Joe Shimoda. And by the way, this year they don't have to break in a whole new chassis. There were some struggles at the beginning of 2025, 26. This might be pretty simple for them.
Yeah, I think struggle might be understating what was going on in Anaheim 1 last year. Both of them were battling to get inside the top 10, and everybody, to a man, riders, industry, fans, were leaving Anaheim 1 going, what was going on with Jet and Hunter Lawrence tonight? So to your point, They're not going to have to deal with any of that. There's always some uncertainty day one with the bike. Maybe you try some things that don't necessarily work, but the crazy variance just being way off, you're not going to see that this coming January like you did a year ago. And that doesn't mean they win the race, but they're going to be relevant. And they simply were not relevant in Anaheim last year. So all of this is incredibly bad news for every other rider we previously mentioned, because you have who are arguably the best two riders in the sport at the moment coming in with virtually no change, healthy and ready to go. You don't like handing out trophies in October, November, even in January. But man, those guys have to be the favorites on paper as we sit right now.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports. If you enjoyed what you just watched, well, it's time to bring the action and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel. You can have it all: news, highlights, interviews, and analysis. So go for it.